Alrighty, it looks like our attendees have leveled off, so I'm going to get started. The first thing before we get into anything is that this webinar does have live transcription enabled. If you would like to use the live transcription, please click the closed captioning or live transcription button at the bottom of your screen. You can then click show subtitle. It should pop up and you can change the size or anything. If you have any trouble, please do send a note in the chat and we'll be happy to try to troubleshoot with you. Okay, so welcome to the OVS VAP Training Center webinar, Best Practices Using Staff Lived Experiences. This is a part of the OVS Training and Technical Assistance Request Program in partnership with our colleagues at the CUNY Institute for State and Local Governance, and we are very, very happy to have you here today. My name is Rachel Gentili. I'm a Program Outreach Specialist in the Training and Outreach Unit at OVS. You've all definitely heard from me or my supervisor, Blake, who is on a very well-deserved vacation this week. So I'm taking the reins today. Our director, Elizabeth Cronin, is also with us today and will offer some opening remarks shortly after I cover just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. As I mentioned before, today's webinar is part of the TARP program, the Training and Technical Assistance Request Program, and it's part of a series of webinars that we are offering over the next few months. The ISLG team will be sharing a little bit more about TARP. It is a free custom training that anybody who is funded by OVS can use. So we really, really encourage you to do a little research on that and learn a little more and submit your request for your custom training today. CUNY ISLG is a fantastic team, and we're really excited for you to hear from them in just a moment. For the last couple of years, we've hosted series of webinars designed to help you tackle some of the unique challenges and pressing issues you and the programs you work for might be facing. All of this is based on your feedback, and today's no different. So we hope you get the most out of today's training from Murto and Francisco. And should you want to go back or revisit, today's webinar is being recorded and it will be published on our YouTube channel sometime next week. It'll probably be about a week or so from today. Also, the slides for today's session, I believe Talon has a link. They were also shared previously and will be able to be found after we complete when we send our evaluation materials. All of our training information can be found on the OVS training page at ovs.ny.gov/training. Last thing before I pass it to Elizabeth is that as you exit today's webinar, you will be directed to a brief evaluation survey about this presentation. I know nobody wants to complete them, but it is invaluable for us to take your feedback. It directly impacts future trainings that we do. So we do ask that you take just about 2 to 3 minutes, complete that evaluation. It's really, really helpful to us. And with that being said, I'd like to welcome the Office of Victim Services Director, Elizabeth Cronin. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I appreciate it. I'm so thrilled to be here. And we are really excited to be working with ISLG. You guys have been putting together some fantastic trainings, and I know that they are needed and appreciated. And I'm also thrilled that so many of you from all over the state are here to listen to a presentation about something that I think a lot of us experience. You know, so many of our staff come to this work because of what they've experienced. So, you know, how do we recognize that and how do we utilize that in appropriate ways? I want to just thank my team at OVS from the training and outreach. We like to refer to them as the dream team. Rachel, Blake, Lauren just do fantastic job in working on these presentations and putting together trainings, including not only TTARP, but also, you know, our conferences and our summits. I want to thank Allison, Talon, and the whole crew at CUNY for putting on such wonderful programming. And I want to introduce Mia Greco, who Talon apparently is having some laryngitis issues. So we are going to let them have a break, and Mia is going to introduce our presenters today. So thanks to everybody for being here and really looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth. Yes, I'm Mia Greco. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a policy analyst at the CUNY Institute for State and Local Governance. As we've mentioned, we proudly partner with OVS in this project, and what you'll see today is a webinar with the talk with TARP, which provides TTA services to victim assistance programs across the state. And so in addition to the webinars that we also offer individualized TTA to organizations that request it. So this TTA is custom tailored to your needs. It draws on expertise from training professionals, whether at ISLG or within our network of TTA providers, and we offer it to you at no cost. To request this individualized TTA, we ask that you submit a form. We've listed here a few different thanks, Taylin, a few different topics that it's a small sample of the types of TTA topics we cover in our individualized TTA. We wanted to give you a taste here, but we also encourage you to look at our course catalog of all the kinds of TTA we can offer you. Looking at how you request this individualized TTA, all we ask is that an executive director or program director at your organization check out our catalog, see what kind of services we can offer, and then submit a technical assistance request form. From there, we'll reach out to you and we'll start providing that individualized free TTA. So all that said together, thank you for coming today. We're so excited to pass the mic to Myrto Gardner and Francisco Cordero. They're both at the Center for Trauma Innovation at Exodus, and I'll let them introduce themselves, but thank you all again. We're excited to offer this today.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you. Thank you for joining. I'm Myrto Gardner, and this is Francisco Cordero.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and we're happy to present on the best practices of using staff lived experience. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to describe the place where we work, Exodus Transitional Community. We're going to describe our department, the Center for Trauma Innovation, and then we're going to discuss the importance of lived experience, and we're going to explore some of the foundations of best practices when using staff with lived experience. This training does not necessarily give you like instructions of how to use staff lived experience, but more it's suggestions and what we've done and what we feel works for Exodus. So this is an interactive training. So we are going to be using a text poll. So if you take a few moments now to text Myrto Gardner 590 to 22333, then that will enter you into the text poll. All right, so I'm just giving folks a few moments to enter into the poll. And the poll is active, so now if you would mind just responding to some of the questions, we'll give folks a few moments to respond. Okay, maybe about 10 more seconds or so. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, thank you. So we have, I guess, a variety of organizations that serve people with different needs. DV, IPV, people who have experienced homelessness, people who are justice impacted, people who use substances, and then some organizations are more specifically focused on DV, IPV, justice, people who are justice impacted, and some folks here don't serve any of those populations, but are interested using staff lived experience. So happy to have all of you on board.
Interesting to see how they all use a multiple, but also the majority.
Indeed, indeed. So we're going to take some time to respond to the second question in the poll. This is interesting. It's interesting here. So we see, you know, there are a lot of organizations. It's pretty much split, right? So we have a lot of organizations where the majority of their staff are line staff have lived experience. You know, look here, we're looking at, I guess, over 50% of line staff that have lived experience, which is very good to see. But there are a number of organizations where their line staff have less than 60% of lived experience. And the last poll for today is, now we want you to answer this question based on your organization's leadership. This is line staff. The slide is not. Leadership. There we go. So this is interesting here. It's almost about a flip here. So we had on the previous slide, we had you know, over 60% of people on this webinar with line staff that had lived experience. But here we have the majority of folks here who responded to the poll have 20% or less of individuals in leadership at their organizations that have lived experience. Thank you all for participating in that. So now we want to talk a little bit about Exodus. So Exodus Transitional Community is an organization, a nonprofit organization that's based out of East Harlem, New York City, that primarily deal with people who are impacted by the criminal justice system. However, at Exodus, we do serve a variety of folks. So we serve a wide variety of people. And at the Center for Trauma Innovation, where Francisco and I work, we serve a diverse array of population. However, our current demographics, how we would respond to this, the polling questions. At Exodus, we have the overwhelming population of our line staff do have lived experience in the criminal justice system and in other areas. So we have about 85 to 93% of our line staff that have lived experience. And then on our executive team, we have over 50% of, we have 60% of folks on our executive team who have lived experience, including the CEO of Exodus. And that's really grounded in the belief that when participants are coming to service providers to receive services, it's good to have somebody that has knowledge of the life that they've lived in order to best serve them.
And experiences that have helped them build the resilience, like you stated in our mission. Resilience is key.
Indeed. So what is the Center for Trauma Innovation? So the Center for Trauma Innovation was an opportunity that was presented through a grant from the Criminal Justice Investment Initiative that Mia spoke briefly about previously. And the Criminal Justice Investment Initiative was this program by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to fund programming throughout the borough of Manhattan to help prevent people's involvement in the criminal justice system. So those funds essentially funded programs that were doing a variety of services, including people who young children and families, preventing them from involvement of the criminal justice system, victims of violence, as well as helping people not reoffend. So the CTI, the Center for Trauma Innovation, was developed, it was a program developed through that initiative, the Criminal Justice Investment Initiative, to serve people who are primarily victims of crime, but people who have experienced trauma. So here at the CTI, we offer an array of services that are all free, that are geared towards trauma healing.
Services that are prescriptive to what we face in our communities, where we come from, where we are returning to.
Indeed. And we do that using a three-pronged approach. We have direct services, training and technical assistance, and the learning community. So our direct services, what we do is we provide some of the traditional clinical modes of therapy. So we have individual therapy, and then we also have group therapy here. But then what we also offer are some non-traditional healing services. So we have a yoga program here. We have a puppy therapy program. We have a boxing program. We're going to be starting a karate program soon. We've had a knitting program, which is very trauma informed. When you're knitting, it's a mindfulness practice where you're in the moment. But then you're also creating something, right? Which is that in of itself is healing from trauma. And all of those services fall under our direct service components. And
with the workshops, what we aim to do is to connect the mind with the body when we're working as trauma-informed practitioners, keeping that up front.
Indeed, because trauma both impacts the mind and the body.
As you all know, I'm sure.
Indeed. Our training and technical assistance arm of the CTI, what we are doing here is, things like this webinar, but we're also promoting not just the traditional academic ways of doing training. Since we do firmly believe that knowledge comes from multiple sources, we use that within our training model. So we provide training that is both academically sound, but also comes from credible messengers that understand the nuances of whatever lived experience population that organizations are working with. And so we keep our mission as Exodus and as the CTI in line with our training and technical assistance initiatives.
Credible messages who have been able to take their experiences and transform them, translate them into some form of healing that can ripple effect. Same way the arms does.
Indeed.
But in a more positive way, beautiful way.
And we also have a learning community that is going to be a collaboration of various stakeholders, including other nonprofit organizations, academic institutions, government entities, and just people that are interested in learning and teaching more about trauma. So we are collaborating, and we're, if you're interested in joining our learning community, please leave your information and we'd be happy to include you in our future offerings. So now what we're going to do is we're going to share a video just to sort of ground us in some of the what we plan to do in this webinar, which is to do a deeper dive on lived experience.
What's this? Really taste his choice moment between guys?
This is really nice. You got a thing for swans? Is this like a fetish? It's something like maybe we need to devote some time to?
Thought about what you said to me the other day about my painting. Stayed up half the night thinking about it. Something occurred to me. I fell into a deep, peaceful sleep and haven't thought about you since. You know what occurred to me?
No.
You're just a kid. You don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about.
Why, thank you.
It's all right. You've never been out of Boston.
Nope.
So if I asked you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book ever written. Michelangelo. You know a lot about him. Life's work, political aspirations, him and the Pope, sexual orientation, the whole works, right? I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling. Seen that. If I ask you about women, you'd probably give me a syllabus of your personal favorites. You may have even been laid a few times. But you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy. You're a tough kid. I ask you about war, you'd probably throw Shakespeare at me, right? Once more into the breach, dear friends. But you've never been near one. You've never held your best friend's head in your lap and watch him gasp his last breath looking to you for help. I ask you about love, you'd probably quote me a sonnet. But you've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable. Known someone that could level you with her eyes. Feeling like God put an angel on earth just for you. Who could rescue you from the depths of hell. And you wouldn't know what it's like to be her angel. To have that love for her be there forever. Through anything. Through cancer. And you would know about sleeping sitting up in a hospital room for 2 months holding her hand because the doctors could see in your eyes that the terms visiting hours don't apply to you. You don't know about real loss because that only occurs when you love something more than you love yourself. I doubt you've ever dared to love anybody that much. I look at you, I don't see an intelligent, confident man. I see a cocky, scared, shitless kid. But you're a genius, Will. No one denies that. No one could possibly understand the depths of you. But you presume to know everything about me because you saw a painting of mine. You ripped my fucking life apart. You're an orphan, right? Do you think I'd know the first thing about how hard your life has been? How you feel? Who you are? Because I read Oliver Twist? Does that encapsulate you? Personally, I don't give a shit about all that because you know what? I can't learn anything from you. I can't read in some fucking book. Unless you want to talk about you, who you are. Then I'm fascinated. I'm in. But you don't want to do that, do you, sport? You're terrified of what you might say. Your move, Chief.
What's this? Good. Taste his choice.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. Hello again. What I would like to present here is that the idea of when we chose this video as the grounding video, we understood that it can be viewed as a simplistic comparison between book knowledge and life knowledge. But on another layer, what I see is that Robin Williams' character is talking about describing realms. Worlds of hurt, worlds of pain, And at Exodus, we believe that pain can be a mechanism for change. It's the ingredients of resilience. And taking this life experience, we hold life experience up as high as formal education.
Indeed, and we believe that every individual has the power to drive their own healing on the participant side as well as on the staff side. And I think that is, one of the keys and the key takeaways that we're going to that we want to drive home today. So at this point, we do have a slide up, but we want to pause and see if we can respond to some questions in the chat. So I'm going to ask our Vice President, who's monitoring the chat, Kathleen, to just let us know if there are any pertinent questions that we want to address at this point.
Hi, good afternoon, team. At this point, the questions that have come are just around if the services at the CTI are open to all who have experienced trauma, and the answer is yes.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Kathleen. So we're going to check back with you in another few minutes.
Great, thank you.
So within these definitions, if you see, for us here, the connection between representation and experience, for us, how we look at it in this program and in Exodus as a whole, is that it enriches the program here. It enriches our method. People who can take losses and failures and triumphs and translate them, transform them into something that we can present to other people to help them heal is so big here, and it's encouraged here.
Indeed, and we also promote the idea of valuing what somebody's experience is and what that does to a participant when they come into a space and then are able to identify with the person that's the actual service provider. There's a lot of magic there. There's a lot of things that are that don't necessarily have to be said. And then what this also does, it is trauma informed because it centers the person in their own healing and makes them an expert. If you would take for a moment to imagine, what that would do for you if you were a participant or when you're a participant, and then what that would do for you if you worked at a place where you did have lived experience, but know that this is a place that acknowledges the gifts that you have, the knowledge that you gain from those experiences in order to help you do the work that you do.
The grounding video also contributes to the idea of how it's a reminder of the whole myriad of experiences that we encounter, you all encounter in the populations we serve, according to the survey. The question, of course, is when employing staff, is how this lived experience has imprinted their psyche and their body.
Yeah, indeed. And then learning how to use that within the work that you do daily.
So, pillars of restoration. So we can remain within the root definition of trauma. It means heal. It means wound. Okay, so no matter what you put on the surface of a wound, the healing comes from within. And so, pillars of restoration for us is what we draw from within, ancestral elements that were imprinted on us, that we can engage in and utilize with us during a lived experience, a traumatic experience. I'll start with the main three: hope, love, and goodness. And from that, the byproducts of all of those three can just enrich the work.
Indeed. And if you believe in if you have hope to believe in the goodness of a person, not just what they did, not who they used to be, but the genuine goodness of a person, and using that to help them inform the work that they do at organizations. That is one of the things that we view as a pillar here that we use daily in the work that we do here. And the
image of the redwoods, for me, I call these forever trees. So they're just like they're ancient, they're there, and the strength there is ancient.
Indeed. So these are things that, values that you may have grown up with that you now also use to do the work that you do and to engage with the folks that you work with.
Right. Things like loyalty, trust, family, friends.
Indeed. So what we've done organizationally is we've adopted a set of agency values, and the way we've done that is through collaboration. So one of the things that we want you all to take away from here is if your agency has not done this, then to consider collaborating with another organization to develop some agency values. And so what Exodus did a few years ago is they collaborated with the Sanctuary Institute, and they developed, at that point, it was 7 commitments, which are the ones that you see here in black. Nonviolence, emotional intelligence, social learning, democracy, open communication, social responsibility, and growth and change. And so after those 7 commitments were developed, Exodus as a whole, the leadership included, and the line staff got together and developed 3 other commitments that are more specific to the agency. And these are the concepts of liberation, collective leadership, and self-reflection. So when you look at these 10 commitments, we use these as sort of like a guidepost. These ideals that we strive for as an agency. The nonviolence has to do with creating a safe space. How do you create a safe space for staff to do their jobs, right? Part of that is acknowledging who they are, right? Acknowledging where they came from and how that influenced the person who they are and the work that they do and the work that they're going to be doing for the agency. Emotional intelligence is in line with that, right? That provides people with the opportunity to reflect on what's going on for them. And how their emotions are intertwined in the work that they do, particularly if you're working with people that have the same experience as you had as a staff member, right? We also have social learning, right? We believe that as long as you're continuing to learn, you continue to improve the work that we do. So we have that as a core agency value. Democracy. We don't just make unilateral decisions, right? We discuss it with each other. We promote an environment where other people are able to give their voice, right? Give their choice, right? Which is a trauma-informed principle, right? Open communication, right? That deals with transparency. While sometimes, we might have to make rules on the leadership level, but we are transparent with those rules. We're all transparent where they come from and the reasons why. And we ask for people in all facets of the organization to communicate their thoughts and to offer voice when it comes to developing rules, developing guidelines. And then growth and change. Growth and change deals with believing that people are going to be better, right? So we have, obviously, like, most organizations have, end of year appraisals, mid-year appraisals, where we sort of talk about these concepts. In what ways can we help you grow and change? And if you're working with people with lived experience, it's important to consider what are some of the things that they bring to the work and how those things can help them and the participants grow and change. And then social responsibility, which I skipped, is the concept that we believe that we're all stewards of this. It's not just the CEO's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility to promote the values of their organization and to live by them. So those first 7, as I said before, we collaborated to develop. The next 3 were things that we really saw that were core to Exodus, right? So Exodus primarily serves people who are returning citizens from incarceration, although we do serve an array of folks, but liberation right? Liberation is a key component that we feel like is very important to the work that we do, right? Collective leadership, right? The answer doesn't just come from, you know, the director or, you know, another boss, a vice president or something like that. You know, we all have something to say, right? And we all look at other people as leaders, and we do whatever we can to help bring people into leadership roles, right? And then all of this is done through self-reflection. You can't abide by any one of these commitments if you're not reflecting on what it means for you and what it means for the agency, the things that you do and the things that you may not do that might have an impact on the work.
Reflecting and growing from these reflections, developing a different level of understanding that can really be healing. Like Myrtle pointed out, the majority of, and in the previous slide, it's pointed out that the majority of staff are returning citizens. What's phrased now as justice impacted. But you all know in the field, and what we experience here is that when we say justice impacted, we're talking about everybody. Where you know, everybody that you deal with as well. Human trafficking, domestic violence, not only prison. And then with that, helping our staff learn from this suffering in a way that builds practitioners that can then take this to the next level, combining the lived experience with the formal education, the trainings, what we push forward here in these commitments. These are all derivatives of goodness. This comes from the roots, these pillars that we talked about, the restoration, all of these commitments here are derived from that.
Indeed. So here we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, some of the ways that we use day-to-day processes to help promote effective use of lived experience. So one of the things that we do here is we pay attention to language, right? And it's specific to, you know, the population that we work with, but also with the staff that are employed at Exodus, right? So for example, we don't have supervision sessions at Exodus. We have strategy sessions because supervision is a word that is associated with, being under supervision. So we're very intentional about the language that we use daily, right? So we don't say people are victims, right? We say that people are survivors, right? But also a part of that is that we allow people to define who they are, right? And let them take the lead on what language to use to speak to them and to deal with them.
And in the clinical perspective, so now when we're providing services, the way when we pay attention to language, what we learn from this experience is all the forms: verbal, body language, presence. These are the things that one can gather from the experience and use in the treatment, what we do here at staff. Prioritizing staff safety, but again, with our programming, first and foremost is a policy of nonviolence. That's first in the commitments here at ECTI. A sense of safety here for everyone and everybody, because they may be triggered. There are nuances to this language, nuances to this practice that triggers people. And supported autonomy to me speaks to the leadership piece, where we enable the staff again to just be all you can be.
Indeed. And it's, that's one of the things that we really want to, people to reflect on. So if you're hiring people with lived experience, you have to also take into consideration that what they might bring to your organization, you might not understand, right? Some methods that you don't understand. So, you have to work with folks to be able to let them use their expertise, but then also support them in using that expertise. And that's part of the ingredient.
Right, building inclusivity, right? Building community within our organization.
And so next, we want to, as a guideline, as a takeaway, is to employ the right staff, right? And by that, we mean look at the population that you serve and look at what they would want to come who they would want to be their service provider. Do you have those people working at your organization actually? Or do you just have, a bunch of academic experts working at your organization? How does that work for you if you don't have enough people who have actually experienced, who have experiential knowledge of wherever you're providing your services? Do you have those experts on staff?
Well, and also, I think a point to bring up here is, what practitioner hasn't had some type of experience, hasn't suffered through something, loss, heartbreak, things like that, feelings of powerlessness we talk about. So we encourage staff that in that humility, you then build up and have a renewed understanding from these experiences, and working with staff and talking with others and learning now, even now in practice.
Indeed.
Further.
Indeed. And, to create spaces to have those experts, do a critical analysis of your organization and ask yourself the question, do we have this, have we put up barriers of, hiring people with lived experience? Do we have, things like, background checks, how does that impact it? Not necessarily that you should remove your background checks, but, question, does this impact our ability to hire the people that we need to be able to do the job here?
Honest enough to say, does it create biases?
Mm.
These are the things that can infiltrate and serve as a barrier. Background checks, automatic, just right away it sets something in the mind.
Indeed. And then, there are a number of organizations that, operate from, a myth of readiness. Like, you have to be, out of whatever this experience is for amount of time, 6 months, 2 years, whatever, the amount of time that's going to, sometimes people believe that's going to, cure and have you sort of removed from the work, from the life enough to do the work. And we ask that people consider that as a possible myth. Is there an amount of time, right, that can just, essentially, be the cure for whatever experiences that you had? Or is it the reflection that you were doing while those experiences, or was it the gems that you learned?
So for a moment, let's keep it with justice impacted populations. An example of that may be like, and seeking to approach someone right out of the gate, we have an understanding that, while they were inside, they were not the people who were transforming their lived experience were not just sitting on their hands inside a cell. Mm-hmm. They were active. This self-reflection piece that was going on, because people who wanted to transform their lived experience, we're not using it as a bar saying you got to come home and start learning how to reintegrate, re-assimilate, get back with your family. No, come right in, jump right into the deep water, and because we are here to support you with that as you learn and grow. Preparing to do this work, man, solid.
Indeed. And then really challenging yourself to look at what does that support look like, right? Because one of the things that we do here at Exodus is, if somebody literally did 30 years in prison and then they were released and met the criteria for a job they applied for at Exodus, then Exodus would hire that person. And then we do that that's our agency philosophy, that we believe in resilience, but then we also do that as a risk, and we do that and we learn from that, right? But then we also provide supports to help mitigate that. All the research says that people returning home from incarceration are highly traumatized, right? Highly traumatized before they go in, right? Then the trauma of incarceration, now highly traumatized after they come out. And those things impact somebody's ability to do the work. However, as Francisco said, we all have a level of lived experience. So whether you're hiring people who are formerly incarcerated, whether you're hiring people who have experienced domestic violence, whether you're hiring people who are former substance users, all of these things are trauma is intertwined with those, and you are, essentially helping people understand, like, you know, that experience doesn't define you. Instead, it makes you an expert in this. And we want to be patient with you as you grow and change, and as you use your expertise to do the work, right? So, you know, we do things like, you know, not everybody's going to sit through an hour-long supervision session, right? So how can you make it a little bit more informal while also doing the work that you're doing, while completing the task? We have here at the CTI, we have pods. These are places where our team sort of breaks up into smaller teams, and your supervisor is not allowed to be in your pod. And people who are the pod leads are not supervisors, so they have an opportunity to grow and develop leadership, and then they have an opportunity to be who they are without their supervisor being present. We also have a staff men's group and a staff women's group where people can go to during work hours. They can go to and be able to have peer-to-peer interactions with other folks that also have lived experience in the work environment. Because if you have lived experience and you're working with people that have lived experience, as Francisco said, that can be very triggering. So you have to provide supports at work during work hours, if you want to be serious about it, right? During work hours, to provide the staff with an opportunity to sort of process these experiences.
And in doing so, and engaging our staff in this manner, the opposite of that to me is it's like a gamut of maturity that we're adding to the curriculum. Maturity that, again, we talked about the nuances and knowing when is the right time to approach something, when to say something, when to throw in this particular program, or what to add to the program. That comes from it as well, too.
Indeed. So we're going to pause right now for some more questions. I do see a lot of Q&A here. So we're going to pause. We're going to turn it over to Kathleen, and then we're going to see if there's we're going to continue on after that.
Hi. Amanda and I from Vera House have been, you know, sort of chatting just about engaging, actually sort of the opposite, like how do you engage leadership that is not justice impact, sorry, I'm so used to saying justice impacted, that doesn't have lived experience and doesn't really support that model. So that can be quite difficult. And just around, and something that we do see also at Exodus, Francisco, you and I have talked about this often, is someone, when you hire them with lived experience, sort of what you were just talking about, just making sure that there is scaffolding, because people may be re-traumatized if they're working in sort of the same environment. And even often with us, there are many staff that know each other from up top, right? So how does that look, and what supports do we put in place for that?
Indeed. Oh, thank you for that. We actually do plan to discuss some of that stuff in the slide after this next slide. But I don't know if there's any comments that you have. Yes, but thank you for that question.
Thank you, Kim.
We also have a question. I'm sorry, it just came in a minute ago. From Reverend Michelle Rivera Maldonado, asking if we use hypnosis as well as a healing tool for trauma.
Oh, great question. We do not use hypnosis. We do have, we have used EMDR here, and we're looking into training more staff to be able to provide EMDR, but not hypnosis. But I do acknowledge that hypnosis. There is research that hypnosis is a very important tool to use to help heal from trauma.
What community messages here, David?
And then we had just one more question. If Exodus offers counseling for survivals of domestic violence, and I am answering yes, absolutely we do. That is one of our strong areas, actually, and something that we didn't necessarily initially plan for the Center for Trauma Innovation. However, being Exodus as we are, we really have tailored services to who we're seeing walking in the door.
So as we begin to model our treatment programs after a restorative approach, this is what we started picking up, the need for this additional services for families.
Indeed, indeed. And as folks know, trauma-informed practice calls you to pivot, right? And calls you to change and to be able to develop models to serve who's walking into your doors or to know where to send them. So we're going to share a brief video. This one is about 3 minutes long.
Last video.
Yes, this is the last video where that sort of ties some of our points together.
So as a young woman who basically grew up in various mental health services, I always understood that the experts, or the only experts, I should say, are the ones who have a series of letters after their names. And I never thought that I had any kind of expertise or really anything to offer. And it really wasn't until I got involved in the recovery movement that I heard about this concept of lived experience. And as it was explained to me, that it's really this idea that we are experts by experience, people who've lived with mental health conditions, people who've been suicidal, people who are trauma survivors, that is just as valuable as the kind of academic credentials that people earn, and that it's incredibly important that we work together as partners. The Zero Suicide Initiative is really promoting the importance of including lived experience as a guiding force in helping to shape the way services are designed and delivered, to really ensure quality control, to make the services relevant and accessible to the populations that we're working with. So there's a whole variety of benefits that can accrue. Another benefit of involving people with lived experience in your planning and your policy development, et cetera, that it really increases credibility and trust with the community. I've worked with hospitals, for example, that do have community outreach programs where they invite all of the stakeholders and regularly consult with them and ask, what they could be doing better, how they could improve their community linkages and their continuum of care. And it really does foster trust and credibility, and people really do feel like they have a stake in the process. And it helps to really create a stronger community engagement overall. It's important to remember that involving people with lived experience and involving peer support, it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it takes time and it takes commitment, but it's absolutely doable. So I really encourage you to just take whatever step that you can take right now and just build on it. Make an effort to really incorporate that lived experience voice more deeply into what you're doing.
Thanks again, everyone, for your patience with that. What I would like to point out, my early experience in this field was also as in recovery in substance abuse counselor. Started with adolescents onto adults and whole families. What I see in this video, what I think is relevant here to bring up is how maybe you also have seen people in your work how when they have come out of a traumatic experience or lived experience where they exhibit this sense of renewal, right? This energy, they want to get back, they want to help, they want to enter the field. So many people, when I came out of recovery, you see they conquered something like drug addiction or came out of something like human trafficking experience and now just want to go back and help people that are behind. I mean, that energy is vibrant. And what we encourage here, people to do and what we do at Exodus is we embrace that. We embrace this energy, that know-how that someone may have picked up from an experience. And we encourage you to do the same,
Indeed, and one of the things that we really liked about this video as well is that what Ms. Harris was sharing was that it doesn't happen overnight, right? There are challenges with it, but it is certainly the best way to connect with the population that you're working with, and it's a reminder of what you're doing there? Like, what type of services are you offering? Do people who are going to receive services, do they feel comfortable there? Do they want to work with the staff that are being employed by your organization? It calls you to sort of reflect on all of that.
Okay, I also like to touch on a concern that we've encountered here at Exodus when dealing with these populations is in your hiring practices is what exactly makes a messenger credible. And what we're seeing, what we're learning with is that lived experience alone does not do that. It's being able to transform that lived experience. That's what we see, that's what we encourage with our staff, you know, going through something, yes. It's an accomplishment. But what we encourage is change from this, what you just got into.
Right. And so, this is, you know, one of, this relates back to one of the 10 commandments that we shared with you earlier, right? The growth and change piece, right? And so it's using that experience to grow and become resilient from, and then also to help other people change. Right. You know, here we have some things about, you know, helping, you know, how do you make the lived experience make sense here? And, you know, I guess, you know, this speaks to the question, I believe it was from Vera that Kathleen had shared. You know, one of the points here, I think, you know, this top bullet here is to avoid trauma bonding, right? So there's peer trauma bonding that happens, and there's also non-peer trauma bonding, right? And the way that looks like peer trauma bonding could be, you know, something like, you know, two people that do have lived experience, and they're essentially trading war stories of, you know, this is what happened when, you know, we were living this life. Right, but there's also non-peer trauma bonding, right? That I feel like, you know, if you're in an organization where your leadership or the direct care staff do not have lived experience, avoid trying to use your client population, participant population, to learn everything about the experience. No, it's not necessarily for that, right? It's not necessarily to be like, oh, tell me more about, you know, what happened. It's more of acknowledging, okay, so I know, or, you know, depending on if you don't want to share, I know or I don't know that you have this experience, and I want to be able to use my role in leadership or as a colleague to help support you, and maybe to, you know, I can learn a little bit from you and you can learn a little bit from me, and using it as that. And that way you sort of decrease the power structure, and it becomes more of this collective approach, as opposed to this top-down approach where, you know, somebody is, you know, using somebody else to learn about, you know, a particular life that you haven't been a part of.
So not wearing the learned experience as some kind of badge, or using it as a pedigree, you know, in your approaches, but because that could, what I heard Murta talking about just a moment ago, just we encourage the evolution of someone, you know. So in this evolving, things that trauma go on, and can get our participants and even our staff stuck.
Indeed. So avoid that at all costs, right? And also, you know, using subtle hints from the lived experience, right? And this sort of ties into the first point. You don't have to necessarily say, oh, I've done this for, you know, this many years and that sort of thing. But there's certain things, there's certain language, there's certain nuances that, you know, you can say those things and then people get it, right? So it's similar to, you know, if you live in a neighborhood, you know, with the nuances of the neighborhood, you know what's associated with this park here versus that park over here on this street. You know what's associated with this block here versus this other block, right? And that can be communicated by just saying, oh, I live in this particular neighborhood.
So an example would be for someone who has gone through a traumatic lived experience and adapting their hypervigilance that came out of that into something like a positive intuition, something that they use to connect with the community, with a participant.
Indeed, indeed, and then we also asked to relate themes from the lived experience, right? What are some of the things? What are some of the gems, right, that you've learned while you're in that experience? You know, as Francisco said earlier, most people when they're incarcerated do have the opportunity to self-reflect, right? Do have the opportunity to learn about things. So, like, how can you apply that knowledge that you or those realizations that you came to during whatever life was going on? How do you apply that to your current work situation? And that only really comes from you. It only really comes from the staff to realize, like, oh, well, this experience was meaningful for me in this way. And, maybe this can help me do the work.
Translating into healing for self and for our participants that we serve, the communities.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then finally here, we wanted to emphasize, like, making it stand for something. And that is a huge piece about, healing is a huge piece about purpose there, right? So if you're working at an organization where, people have experienced, IPV, right? And then you have people that are doing the work and are competent in doing the work and helping other people heal from IPV. Sometimes what that can do is that can help the worker understand, like, these experiences were not for naught, right? And not to say that these things should be happening. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is it can help make meaning, right? It can help somebody take something that they learned from that experience and then help other people. And I think, once you provide staff the opportunity to do that, it gives them that platform.
Okay, so focus on creative, corrective, emotional experience. For me, in practice, this talks about exploring ways to develop different types of programming. Taking what some maybe have learned and gathered during their experience and cultivating healing and accountability here at Exodus, because again, where we draw from for our staff and populations we draw from, accountability is key in restorative work. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to adopt restorative practices, that's first and foremost.
Indeed, indeed. And, also by creating a corrective emotional experience, we do acknowledge that, in any way you look at it, any organization that you're working with, which you're working with folks with lived experience, a lot of those experiences have to do with trauma and also stigma. Right. So, when people know that, again, they're working at some place where it acknowledges their past history, it acknowledges and it looks at them as an expert. Right. That is yeah, that's liberating in a sense. Absolutely. And it helps to destigmatize folks. So instead of using the lived experience and associating it with shame, you're using it to be better yourself and grow in your career, but then also help somebody else grow and heal. So these are some ways that agencies can, essentially use just the job as a corrective emotional experience. So you're welcome here. You're welcome to work here. This is a place for you to grow and be you.
And then in honoring cultural groups, what we see, again, we're going back to the pillars now. And if we talk about things like religion and spirituality, we're opening the door to language like redemption and reconciliation and respecting that, what they bring and respecting how they view these terms. Bringing over how we particularly view these terms in our family, where we came, and in the communities that we came from. Mm-hmm. So important with language there. And again, it goes back to pillars such as goodness, spirituality, these things, reciprocity.
Indeed, indeed. And then honoring that culture, right? Honoring whatever culture you came from that made you the person that you are today, right? We don't have to talk about it all day at the agency and, just focus the work on that, but we honor it, right? It's another way of saying that, you are welcome to work here with your expertise.
Okay. Working groups.
Yeah.
supportive modeling. So we're talking about working groups. The supportive modeling that we're talking about is healing approaches that involve our communities. Again, with this restorative focus, our program is designed for that. Here at ECTI, especially.
Indeed, and here there's a lot of sort of things that we ask people to reflect on, right? And part of trying to develop a model or trying to grow and change it, organizationally, has to do with that reflection, right? So it's asking yourself the question, or asking the staff the question, or asking participants the question: how are we doing now? Is this working? Is it not working? What can we change? And being patient, right? And and then that's again the part that I loved about the video with Leah Harris is it doesn't happen overnight. There are going to be challenges, right? How do you recover from those challenges, right? How do you take a hard look and say, well, okay, this can be better if we do it this way. And then how do you listen to feedback for that? What forums do you provide where you can be given that feedback? Looking at all of those things.
And all these things like Murta was talking about speaks to what we said earlier about the sense of agency that we encourage in our staff here.
Indeed,
yes.
Indeed. And then also, again, like looking at your hiring practices, do you have ways, do you have things that you can do while still, maintaining fidelity to your organization? But can you, are there things that you can adapt or adopt to help make it more of a place where people with lived experience would want to work there?
Want to build from, want to remain and grow with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Work
tie into the organization, tie into the culture, and everyone benefits. The field benefits as far as we're concerned with that.
Indeed, yes. So when you do these things, right, it does impact the field, because you're providing opportunities for people with lived experience to refine their expertise. And and if they retire with your agency, that's great. But if they go out into a field, if they go work somewhere else, then they're bringing what they've learned in your agency, the opportunities that they were able to grow, as well as their lived experience, and they're influencing the field that way. So this is a very important thing to look at.
And the lived experience takes more dimensions now. If we're going here, you know what I'm saying? Beyond just the self, into the work.
Indeed. And looking at how can leadership explore ways for it to be safer to have these discussions, right? To have, sort of open forums. About a month ago or so at Exodus, we had an all-staff retreat where we talked about a variety of things. And we talked about a variety of philosophies, about the agency that, and people were able to voice the pros and cons of those philosophies, right? Giving people the choice and the voice to, be able to talk about those things during work hours, right? It's not something like, oh, if you can come in at 5 o'clock, we're having this meeting, this Zoom here is going on while everybody's busy. No, we stopped everything and said, this is an important time for us to reflect, right? So does your leadership in your organization, do they promote that? And if you are leadership in an organization, what are some things that you can do to promote that? Questions? Oh, sorry. I think that was the last slide. So we'll leave that up, and we will pause for or stop for a discussion or questions. Maybe we'll stop the share for now, and then we can open it up for questions and discussion. We look at the Q&A.
Thank you. And while we wait for some of those discussions to maybe come in or people to raise their hands, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to both you, Murto, and you, Francisco. This was fantastic. I have not seen this much engagement in a chat in a really long time. So this is really fabulous. And it sounds like this content is really speaking to and hitting home with a lot of people. So I just wanted to thank you for your time and for sharing it. I'll do my quick closing just because I know some people might have to jump off and I want to give people a chance to gather their thoughts. But then I'll be quiet and I'll leave it to the team to just kind of continue that discussion until the end of our time. I just want to say a special thank you to our director, Elizabeth Cronin, for making this topic a priority, and to our partners at ISLG for putting together today's webinar with, as I said, Murto and Francisco. We're going to send through, when you close out, you'll be automatically directed, but we will send the link through to the evaluation for this event. Please, please, please complete the evaluation. If you liked it, it seems like a lot of you did. Tell us. It helps Murto and Francisco, it helps ISLG, but it also helps OVS, and it helps us get more content like this for you. And please, on the screen, you can see our upcoming 2 sessions, Healing Center Documentation and Enhancing Your Services Planning for Accessibility. Those are coming up. You can find those on our on ovs.ny.gov/training on VAP Connect. We send it out in our listserv, and when you get these slides, you can click here too. We give you information all the time. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I will pass it back to Murto and Francisco and the rest of you to continue your discussion through the end of our time here today.
Thank you very much, Rachel. It's an honor for us to present for OVS, and it's an honor for us to present on the behalf of Exodus. So we thank you very much for this platform, and
thank you for these kind comments.
Indeed, indeed. Yes.
So please, any questions afterwards, please feel free.
Yes, please don't let my comments think that you can't continue this conversation. I just wanted to pop in. I see there are a couple things in the question and answer. I do believe, and Mia or Talon, let me know. I think if people raise their hand, they might be able to unmute. We do have a lot of people on the call. We might not be able to do that, but please do feel free to chat into the chat box and we will address these there.
Thank you very much. And then we also wanted to thank Julio Medina and the entire executive staff at Exodus for allowing us to present on behalf of the organization. So let me open up the question and answer piece here. Let's see. Just bear with us for a second. To answer Yasmin, we do, well, we have healing circles here. We don't necessarily train in healing circles, but we are the Center for Trauma Innovation, and we're always looking at ways to enhance the work that we do. And now, if you're not on the call anymore, I'll type in the answer on the question and answer segment here.
I see someone mentioned Reiki. We mentioned the community healers, and community healers include people who provide acupuncture and Reiki here right within the CTI.
Yes, yes, thank you for that. Yes, no, we did not mention that. We didn't neglect to mention that, but we do offer Reiki, acupuncture, and acupressure here.
So this speaks to our developing our connections to the community, bringing people, provide services around in East Harlem where we're located, and bringing them right here on site to share with our participants and let them know that these sources, these places I've been here are here for them. Also free. Many are free as well, right?
Indeed, yes.
A couple of our healing circles, I'll give you names. One of them is Restoration and Healing. That's on Tuesday afternoons. Right?
Yes, Restoration and Healing, Trauma and Resilience Group, Emotional Regulation. We have a women's group. We have, we're actually starting a LGBTQIA+ group. We have, as I mentioned, a number of non-traditional, non-clinical related interventions from trauma. We have an art therapy group. We try to offer as much as an array of different services to help people heal from trauma.
Wonderful. A few questions came through in the chat. And Mia, thank you. Yes, if you want more, please submit a TARP request because we can get really more into the nitty gritty through a personalized request. But I see there was a question about resources for children.
So currently our grant only allows us to serve people ages 16 and up. The youth department at Exodus has a little bit more flexibility there where they're able to serve people as young as the age of 14, I believe. Kathleen, please correct me if I'm wrong about that. But then when we do get participants who are interested that fall below the age bracket that we're allowed to serve, we do refer out to other organizations for those services.
And then in our designing restorative practices, if we're talking about engaging families, you know, we understand that we may have to buy a venue for children, for mothers to bring their children here. We're talking about engaging the whole family and restorative circles, like you mentioned that.
Indeed.
Bringing the children in a safe place, in a safe environment here. That's the key. This is why we don't or shy away from that, small children, because of what goes on here at CTI, because of the sensitive nature.
Yes, the sensitive nature of the programming that we do. But there are organizations that do provide services for that, so we refer out. I do see something, I think is Amanda Iam. I hope I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So the DA's office did prosecute some international banks. In the Manhattan DA's office prosecuted international banks several years ago. And through that prosecution, they were able to reach a settlement. So a lot of the bank's headquarters are housed here in the borough of Manhattan of New York City. And so when they reached that settlement and got hundreds of millions of dollars from these banks, they took a portion of those funds. So those funds typically, when DA's offices make these major prosecutions and major busts, if it's the mob or just make these major asset forfeiture seizures, that money typically goes into fighting crime again. What the DA's office did, a few years ago under Cy Vance, when this money was available, was they earmarked about $250 million of that to reinvest into preventing crime. And this is where, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, where there were monies given to programs that to help people prevent crime, so children and families, to prevent them from entering into the criminal legal system. There was monies available for access to victim services, and there were monies available to help people not reoffend, right? So a lot of monies were invested in education programs, because education is essentially one of the primary factors that prevent people from reoffending. So all of those monies were essentially given by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to various programs, and the CTI was one of those programs, one of the final programs under the Criminal Justice Investment Initiative.
And one of the interesting developments that occurred, like we have an alternative to incarceration program here at Exodus, ECTI, and we are now working in conjunction with them, providing therapeutic element to change the face of reform. And we're working directly with courts, judges, CCI, Center for Court Innovation also, where we influence or we help people who already have active cases, open cases, gain more from the experience dealing with the court involvement. And not just getting sent away. And this is what we're seeing now, the trend that's occurring with courts, being open to that. And that's why this work is so important, because we're recruiting people who have had lived experience in the reform. That is a hit that this is amazing. It defines the new era that we are in right now, that we have an opportunity for.
Indeed.
Murto and Francisco, I believe that we have a question. Someone has their hand up, one of our attendees, Reverend Michelle. Michelle, would you be interested in sharing your question if we unmuted you?
Hey, hi, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
I just had a general question because I am a reverend and I do work in domestic violence. I have a Christian ministry for a long time in domestic violence, but I'm also the tenant association at one of the NYCHA developments in the Bronx. Do you guys provide any sort of trainings for actually those NYCHA development, like the volunteers, like so they can have a more outline of, you know, some sort of trainings, like, you know, because a lot of people live in these developments and they do need these type of healings and these type of trauma experiences, because, you know, that's how domestic violence sometimes occurs and difficulties because they're not fully healed. And I think that, can you provide this type of training for NYCHA, you know, volunteers who work for the tenant associations so they can have an idea and information how to actually work with everyone and, you know, share this information with actually the NYCHA developments, because the NYCHA developments have a lot of these difficulties right now with probation and trauma and, you know, domestic violence. And I think it's, I mean, do you guys provide this type of services? We're in the Bronx actually, and I also work with Voices of Women as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm part of the Voices of Women also staff, and we have an advisory board here. You know, if you guys provide these type of services, like for the NYCHA developments, and, you know, it'll be actually a great opportunity to find a way to actually heal the trauma of the people that live here. Some seniors also actually need that, and people who have disabilities as well, mm-hmm. that they don't have this type of money to actually have these type of services.
No, that's a very great question, and we absolutely do that. We actually have a partnership because here we're located in East Harlem, so as you know, we're not very far from the Bronx. I can, you know, look out of my window. Mm-hmm. Well, not this window here, but the window. Yeah, I got and we can see the Bronx. Yeah, and then Francisco's from the Bronx.
Well, I'm part of Sotomayor. You know, I'm part of Sotomayor. The building used to be called Bronxdale, but now it's Sotomayor.
Oh, okay. Indeed. But then we actually just started a new partnership with Wagner Houses here in East Harlem, where we're going to be working with one of the long-term residents there in helping to promote trauma healing at in the community, inside the projects in Wagner. And then also this doesn't necessarily fall within the CTI, but this other piece that I'm going to mention is a part of Exodus, where we have another team at Exodus that works very closely with the CTI team. They are the peacekeepers, and they're doing work where they're going to be, well, they're not going to be, but they already are in some of the housing projects here in East Harlem, particularly Wagner, but they also do partner with Jefferson and Johnson, where they're there in the middle of the night, essentially interrupting violence and trying to keep peace. Which is, you know, having that presence there and you know, helping the community, you know, understand, like, you know, if we want to help you heal from trauma, these are some of the things that we have to do, and these are some of the expertise that we have, and that's, I think, some of the benefits to you know, working with people who have lived experience in the justice system, and also lived experience in living the street life. Those are the folks that are best poised to respond in that way in the middle of the night, where they where a lot of violence sometimes happens. You know, obviously, you know, it does happen during the middle of the day as well, but we do have people in the housing projects in the middle of the night.
So you're willing to come down here and provide us with that sort of training on a one-on-one basis?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I also do Reiki. I do Reiki, but, you know, I kind of like went in here because the NYCHA developments do need these type of trainings.
Well, I also want to add to what Berta was saying. What we do for our staff and sending them out, we also are ready to provide ECTI debrief sessions, because these staff is triggered and re-traumatized by what they're facing and what they're dealing with when they're out there in the neighborhood. So we make sure that we have something here to come back and meet with them, and as a team or individually, to make sure that they're okay.
So how can we do this? Just sending an email?
Send an email. I believe I saw Kathleen type in both Francisco and I's email in the chat, but I'm gonna type in both mine and Francisco's.
I can do it, Murto. I got it.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
I can do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, because I'll just forward this to the TA president of here, and I'm the secretary actually, and maybe we can organize something, because this will be actually a great thing for NYCHA developments, and they have free services and services that are willing to help people heal. Excellent training. Thank you for that information today.
Thank you. I do see some other questions in both the chat and the question and answer section. So Tomas Lucero asked a question about naming one or two model organizations for what organizations that model what we're doing, and whether or not we use them as inspiration. I think that's a very interesting and unique question. For this, I can speak for the CTI, and I don't know if Kathleen wants to speak on behalf of Exodus in general. But for the CTI, we use both. We're trauma informed, or we strive to be trauma informed, as all organizations are, should be striving to be trauma informed, which is more of an ideal as opposed to sort of check boxes, right? So we ascribe to all of the principles of trauma informed practice, but then we also follow a certain number of theoretical concepts to inform our work. So we believe that trauma is it's stored in the brain, the body, and we look at how people are responding to trauma, and we align with them in how they're responding to trauma, and sort of use that to help them on their healing journey. That's essentially, sort of the model that we use. And it's in line with a lot of the research. The Body Keeps the Score is the seminal work on trauma. Judith Herman's work on complex PTSD provides us a lot of information about trauma and how to approach it, right? Not just with talk therapy, and not just with pathologizing behavior. So that's part of the, as far as what inspires us. Regarding other organizations, Exodus is quite unique in its approach, but I would, Kathleen, if you are available, to provide a couple of remarks on what other organizations inspire the work that Exodus does.
Hi, yes, thank you for that. Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles is also a organization that we, have really, gleaned some of their interventions, their practices. I know Julio and Father G, have an ongoing rapport. We do work closely with the other reentry organizations in the city. However, 25 years ago when Julio was starting, this really was sort of an unknown model, right? And very new and innovative. So, I'm so grateful to ISLG and, to the previous DA's office, who did really see the strength in that innovation and the impact that it had to really allow us to tailor these services at the CTI specifically in a way that just really hasn't been done, at least that we have heard of in the tri-state area.
And by no way dismissing theory and their applications.
Right.
So what I thought about with the question with other organizations, more what I think about is what our staff maybe have gained from the lived experience itself. Exposure to evidence-based practices in their lifetime, seeing what was offered, and then engaging in these programs. If for a moment we can stick with our Exodus and returning citizens, there's a lot of programming that goes on behind the walls in incarceration. Taking some of these frameworks, but adapting them in a way that fosters resilience. And so it is more prescriptive and it is unique. Unique to what I personally have been discovering out here in the field.
Indeed. And it's, you know, asking yourself the question, what works for the person that's sitting or standing in front of me right now? Like what is going to work for them? And you know, sometimes that's, you know, textbook knowledge, sometimes it's lived experience, but most times it's both, right? And it's, you know, essentially paying attention to that. I do see a question here from Letitia, or a comment from Letitia, that, you know, we would like to see more models of, you know, how to essentially engage in lived experience. I think that's a very good point. Thank you for that. To briefly share on that, we don't have necessarily models, but we have learned that just on the virtue of who we are as Exodus, you know, a lot of people, when they're coming here for job interviews and that sort of thing, there are sharing things about themselves that we don't even necessarily ask. So as far as a model, what I would ask you to do, and what I ask organizations to do, is to consider, how can we make this a safe space to have people come to us to want to work at a place where they know that they can use their lived experience.
And Murto and Francisco, we appreciate so much your willingness to stay on, but it is time, I think, to wrap up. We wanted to let everyone know that emails for Murto, Francisco, us at ISLG are in the chat. We also have in the chat our survey, just echoing Rachel from OBS. Your survey results are very important to us. They help us continue to offer these kinds of webinars and individual TTA offerings. And then again, just to pitch one more time, if you're interested in this topic or other topics in our catalog, please have your program director or executive director submit a request form for individualized TTA. We're happy to provide it. And Murto and Francisco, echoing everyone in the chat, all caps letters, thank you so much for the amazing webinar, the content, and the work you do. Rachel, is there anything that I should add or you should add to close us out?
For me, I had my little closeout before Murto and Francisco. This was incredible. Thank you everyone who hung out with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month at our next webinar.
Thank you all. Peace.